Welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Morning Pitt here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You know, the YouTube page. We talk about it all the time. Like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel. I put the subscribe button right down there, make it nice and easy for you. You just click that thing and you are subscribed to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I appreciate everybody who watches these videos and responds to that little prompt when I say it to subscribe. We see the numbers and we definitely appreciate it. So keep doing that, liking the video and subscribing. I mean, you can't keep subscribing. If you as an individual have already subscribed, then you're in for good. But, those of you watching the video who are not subscribed, do me a solid and hit that subscribe button. It doesn't cost anything. And all it does is make me feel good, bump those numbers up. And in the world of the internet, it's all about the numbers, right? Of course, you can also turn on notifications. You get an alert sent to your phone anytime we do anything right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Whether we post a new Morning Pitt video like we are right now, or whether we go live for a live stream, which we do every Wednesday night at 8:30. We did all the post-game shows after the football games this fall. And we'll do some post-game basketball shows as well. Some live streams here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I think we're going to do our first one tomorrow night. Normally it would be our live Panther-Lair show tomorrow night at 8:30. But since Pitt is playing at Duke for a 7 o'clock tip-off, we're not going to start the live stream in the middle of that game. I want to watch the final 10 minutes of that game. So we're not going to start the live stream then. We'll do it after the game. We'll go live for a post-game show right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So hit the what's that button called? Hit the subscribe button. I got distracted there for a second. Sorry. Hit the subscribe button. Turn on notifications. You'll get an alert sent to your phone when we go live tomorrow night. I don't know what time we're going to start after the game tomorrow night. It'll be a little bit after the game. So make sure you subscribe, and then you won't miss it at all. Talked a lot of basketball yesterday in the wake of Pitt's loss to Clemson on Saturday. But there's some football stuff we need to catch up on, and the news just sort of keeps happening there. And it's really about the seniors, because we're still in this cycle. It's going to be about a 5-year cycle where guys who finish their 5th year of eligibility have the option to come back and play a 6th year. The super seniors, the COVID senior guys, the guys who were on a roster in 2020, who get an extra year of eligibility after they use up all their regular eligibility. Of course, that's the rule that allowed Kenny Pickett to come back for his 5th season in 2021. Obviously worked out pretty well for Pitt that he did that. It allowed a lot of those offensive linemen to come back this past season. All those starters, Carter Warren and Marcus Minor and Owen Drexel and Gabe Hoy, in addition to the guys who already had sort of regular eligibility left. And we'll have a couple more years like this, where every year in the offseason we'll be looking at seniors, redshirt seniors, I should say seniors and redshirt seniors, who have the option to come back and play an extra year of eligibility as super seniors. Now, I think each year the number is going to go down. The number of guys who are available to do this or possibilities to do this will go down. I think, we're moving further and further away from those classes that were able to do it. It's really, the recruiting class of 2020, the guys who were freshmen in 2020, it's the last class that's going to be able to do it. Right now, this year, we're talking about guys in the class of 2018 are the ones who, if they redshirted, were able to come back for one extra year in 2023. If they didn't redshirt, it was guys in the class of 2019 who, could make the decision on whether or not they want to come back for this extra year. And so this year and probably the next 2 years, we're going to have this conversation every offseason. You're always going to have questions about that junior or that redshirt junior, maybe even sometimes a redshirt sophomore who has had a really exceptional go, and you say, well, is he going to leave early for the NFL like Izzy Abanikanda did, like you expected Jordan Addison to do? Is he going to go pro? And that'll be the question in the offseason, but there'll be fewer questions. You only have a handful of those underclassmen who are really in position to get out and go, early to the NFL. So you have maybe a half dozen guys you're sort of keeping an eye on each offseason. This year you have 20 guys you're keeping an eye on, and that's not even for the underclassmen. That's not the guys like Brandon Hill or Izzy Abanikanda who left early for the NFL. That's guys who just have the option to come back as that extra year, super senior season. In addition to that handful of underclassmen that you're always going to be keeping an eye on. And so there were 20 guys this year when we entered the season. You entered the 2022 season. You go back to August. There were 20 guys who were coming into the season either as seniors or redshirt seniors who, barring anything unforeseen, would be nearing the end of their sort of regular eligibility this year, and would have the option on coming back. And we're starting to see, and the reason I'm talking about this today, it's a topic I've sort of been kicking around for a little while, wanting to approach it, but we're starting to see some answers come, because all these guys, one way or the other, are going to make some kind of announcement that they're either going or they're staying. They're either coming back for that extra year, or they're going to the NFL, or just moving on with their careers. We got Nick Patty on the screen there for a second. He's announced that he's not coming back to Pitt. He hasn't announced what he's going to do, but he's announced that he's not coming back to Pitt. His Pitt career is over. So that's one of the 20. Patty was a redshirt senior this year, could have come back for a sixth season, and decided that he won't. Now we've seen some guys already announce that they're leaving. Shavassi Dennis announced that he was leaving. He could have come back and played his fifth year as a super senior. Keaton Slovis, obviously transferred to BYU. He could have come back and played an extra year, but obviously went into the transfer portal. Jared Wayne is a guy who was a senior this year, could have come back as a fifth-year super senior, opted to go to the NFL. Haba Baldonado, one of the most recent announcements, made his announcement yesterday that, as a redshirt senior, he decided he was in that class of 2018. He was a freshman the year of the first Coastal Championship. And he announced that he's going to go to the NFL. He's not going to come back for a sixth year. Some others, Nick Patty, I mentioned. John Morgan was a senior this year, or a redshirt senior, actually. Could have come back for an extra year, decided he'd go into the transfer portal, so he's going to... so he transferred to Arkansas. Who else? Eric Hallett announced that he's going to go into the NFL draft. Decided to hang up his career. And then Judson Towner went into the transfer portal. I'm not sure. I forget if he made any official. I don't think he's made any official decision yet. I apologize if I missed that. A number of guys did, and then Kai Wright is going to James Madison. Sam Williams is going to Murray State. Like I mentioned, John Morgan to Arkansas, Keaton Slovis to BYU. There might have been one or two others out there. Jaden Bradley is going to Charlotte, I want to say. And Jalen Barton, I think, is going to Georgia Southern or Georgia State. I always get those two mixed up, and I don't mean that disrespectfully. So you've seen a number of guys announce that they're not going to come back. And I'm sort of the mind that as we go on and move further and further down the line, over these next 2 years of these super seniors and guys who could potentially come back as super seniors, I kind of think we'll see fewer and fewer of them coming back. More and more guys are going to decide to move on, or more and more guys are going to be sort of gently nudged or encouraged by the coaching staff to move on. I think you might have seen that with one or two of these guys this year. I don't know if the coaches told John Morgan, hey, you should leave, but I think they are ready to sort of move on to that next wave of young defensive ends. We talk about this, I think, at the time that Morgan announced he was going to transfer, that while sure, they probably would like to have a sixth-year senior experienced defensive end, not necessarily the most productive defensive end on the roster, but a guy who's been around and played a lot of football. But if you take a guy like John Morgan back for one more year, do you then risk you losing some of your younger defensive ends, the guys you're going to need to be counting on for the next 2, 3, 4 years? Do you risk losing them because they look at it and say, this guy's back, I'm losing playing time again, I got to go somewhere I can play? Like Pat Narduzzi talked a little bit about how everyone celebrated Gabe Hoy and Owen Drexel and Marcus Minor and Carter Wharton coming back for this season. But there might have been a few of the younger offensive linemen who said, really? I wanted to play this year. I didn't want to have to sit behind these guys. Now, as it turned out, all those guys got hurt except for Marcus Minor, and so there were lots of reps and snaps to go around for some of the younger offensive linemen, but that's neither here nor there. I think at some point, the coaches decide they got to move on to some of the younger players, partially because they might risk losing them, with the transfer portal being what it is. And so I think as we get through the next 2 off seasons, you'll probably see more instances like that where the coaches say, We love you. You've been here a long time, but we can't keep you around for a 6th year because we need to be able to cycle through our roster and keep building our roster and hold on to some of the younger players who might leave if you come back. And so this year, there were 20 total, and I think 8 have already announced that they're not going to be coming back, going to the NFL, transferring, moving on, whatever it is. And, it's those 8 that I mentioned. Of those guys, I think obviously you'll miss Jared Wayne. He had an outstanding senior season in 2022. He ended up as Pitt's leading receiver. He was a 1,000-yard receiver. He had a really good season. Kind of piled up the volume late in the year, but I think really you saw steady growth from Jared Wayne freshman through senior year. Where by the end of his career, and I kind of thought this about him coming into the year, but by the end of this season, he had established that he's a really good wide receiver, Whether that's a really good college receiver or someone who can translate to the NFL, we'll see. I'm never good at evaluating and projecting those kinds of things, but he was a really good wide receiver for Pitt this year. And he would have been a really good wide receiver for Pitt next year if he decided to come back. I think running it back with Jared Wayne and Kanate Mumfield and maybe, and Bub Means and filling it out however you can with some of the younger players and maybe additional transfers would have been a boost for the passing game. And losing Jared Wayne, I think definitely cuts into that, and lowers the ceiling on that group. And we'll see maybe unproven guys or transfers we haven't really uncovered yet. Maybe they'll end up making big contributions, but you lose Jared Wayne and you're losing a lot. I think that's a big one that hurts. Servassier Dennis, I think, is one that hurts. They've got some talent in the young linebacker core, but an experienced, talented middle linebacker like him, it takes time to build up to that. Now, they'll be able to start on that process next year, unless they just kind of make it easy and go with a few veteran returning senior guys to play the middle linebacker spot. But I think Servassier Dennis is one that they're going to miss. Haba Baldonado was an interesting decision yesterday. I kind of figured he was going to the NFL. That was kind of my expectation. I thought that at the beginning of the year, and even though his production this past season was not, up to the standard he has come to expect and probably up to what Pitt was hoping for out of him, I still figured he would probably go to the NFL. I think his production was hurt this year by the fact that he was hurt a lot. I'm not sure if he was ever, I don't know if he was ever 100%, but if he was 100%, I don't know how many games he played at 100%. I think he was pretty limited and pretty banged up for most of the season. And I think that held him back. He's shown over the course of his career that he can be a really, really good pass rusher. And I think he's shown over the course of his career that he could be an NFL pass rusher, that he could be, that he could play in the pros in an NFL 4-3 defense. And Pat Narduzzi talked midseason about how the NFL scouts were, and talked late in the season, NFL scouts were still encouraged by Haba Baldonado's film, even though he wasn't producing a lot in the way of sacks and stats. But I'm going to be interested to see what his NFL career ends up being, because I thought as the season progressed, even though I still expected him to go, I thought his lack of production might open the window for him to possibly come back and say, you know what, I can really improve my stock if I can really improve my stock by coming back and having a big 6th year. But I can also understand if you were banged up a little bit, why you might decide to go, and not take that risk and just try and earn your way. So not a terrible surprise. And like I say, as with John Morgan, I think they want some of these younger DNs to step up. Whether it's, Bam Brima or Nakai Johnson or Sam Okunlola. They're going to be relying on some younger guys this year. Deion Hayes is going to be the veteran, upperclassman of the group. And I think he's poised. He could have a breakout season. But you're going to have some youth and some inexperienced players there, some unproven talent there, but talent nonetheless. Other guys who have gone, announced that they're going, like I mentioned, Nick Patty and John Morgan. Eric Hallett, I think, is the loss. He became a really good player in this defense at that field safety position. It's a difficult position. It's not an easy one to master, and it takes a little time to master. But once you get a guy back there who can really do it, it really provides such a foundation for your defense. Jordan Whitehead did that. DeMar Hamlin did that. Eric Hallett did that. Now they're going to have to look for a new guy there. And maybe it's P.J. O'Brien. Maybe Javon McIntyre can play that spot. Maybe they move guys around. I think maybe, incoming freshmen. Potentially there could be a field safety in that group. Jesse Anderson possibly. But it's not an easy spot to learn. And it's not an easy spot to master. And so they're going to be looking for someone to replace him there. And Judson Tallender going. I mean, he was a solid depth guy all along. He was a guy who, that was it. He provided depth and some help on special teams. Never really got a chance to sort of be in the spotlight, but never really played his way into that role. And so, we'll see what happens for him in his final year. Guys who are coming back, though. Now, there's 4 so far out of that original list of 20 who have announced that they're returning. And I think there'll be more added to this list, but there have been 4 who have announced that they're returning. Brandon George, we almost actually can't count. He hasn't really announced that he's returning, even though he is. He was a senior this past year. In 2022, he was a senior. He's played every year of his career, but this year he only played 4 games due to injury. And so he was able to take a red shirt this year and come back again next year and actually have the opportunity to come back another year after that. He'll be a redshirt senior in 2023. And then he could potentially be a super senior in 2024. So we'll have this conversation about Brandon George next offseason as well. But George came back. I kind of expected that he would. I think even if he played all season, he probably would have come back and wanted to have an opportunity to be the starting middle linebacker, which I think is the role he'll be penciled in for, at least in the early going. And then the big announcements yesterday, the 2 big announcements. Well, we'll roll it back a little bit. I think on Saturday, Marquez Williams announced that he's going to come back and play his 6th season at Pitt. He was in that 2018 recruiting class, redshirted, and then played, and became a starter, became a really reliable starter. I think he gave up 1 touchdown all season, according to Pro Football Focus. He became a really talented player out there. Despite being shorter, he's a heck of a competitor. He battles guys, and, he doesn't get targeted very often. I think, there were probably games where he didn't see any targets at all, which I think is a testament to him. I mean, it's a credit to him and show of respect from opponents that they didn't really go to his side at all. And Pitt isn't really losing anyone from the corners. You've got Marquez Williams back. You've got MJ Devonshire back. You've got AJ, presumably AJ Woods will come back. He's actually on the list of guys who have not announced yet. He's a senior this year, and he'll have the option to either come back or go. But it sort of seems like he's going to come back. So you're really returning all the corners from the 2022 roster, at least the upperclassmen and the guys that you were relying on, the guys who played a lot. And so you get another season out of Williams. He'll be done after 2023, but that just keeps, I think, the cornerback position at least really solid, really talented, and really experienced. You're going to have some things to make up in terms of the experience at the safety spots, but the corners look pretty solid right now. They have it put together. And then the 2 announcements yesterday, 2 returning players on the offensive line. Blake Zabovic and Jake Cradle both had the option to be done. They were in that 2018 recruiting class. Cradle out of Butler and Zabovic out of Bell Vernon. And they both announced they're going to come back for a 6th year and play again. I think that's huge. I don't know what your opinion is of Jake Cradle as a player and Blake Zabovic as a player, but I think it's huge to have guys experienced like those 2 coming back on your offensive line, really anchoring the interior of your offensive line. Because, Cradle and Zabovic started the bowl game. They started a lot of games this year because Owen Drexel was out for a while. And when Owen Drexel was out, Jake Cradle shifted from right guard to center, and Zabovic stepped up at right guard as the starter. They started the Sun Bowl. They now have 4 of the 5 starters back from the Sun Bowl. Cradle and Zabovic, plus the tackles, Matt Gonsalves and Branson Taylor, they'll all be back this year. In addition to Ryan Jacoby, who played quite a bit this past season in different spots, a lot of tight end work, but also some guard work here and there. And you know, while I said that the defensive ends, they were sort of willing to move on from those guys because they wanted to get reps for the younger players. I think on the offensive line, you always want those veterans in there. That's always an automatic. If you can have veteran offensive linemen in there, you want them. And you want them, to be around as long as possible. And I know some people will point to last year's offensive line, the 2021 offensive line, and how all those guys came back and how it was supposed to be a great thing. And Pitt's offense didn't exactly look like it was flourishing with senior veteran offensive linemen. But I would point out that those 5 guys who came back, the 4 who returned as super seniors, Gabe Hoy and Carter Warren and Marcus Minor and Owen Drexel, plus Jake Cradle, who was a starter all season and came in as a redshirt senior this year. Those 5 never started a single game together this season. Hoy was out for a while with an injury, then Drexel was out, then Warren was out, and Hoy eventually got in, but Warren was already gone, and Drexel was out. They never really played together this season. And so it was a great thing to have those guys come back. You just needed them actually on the field together. You never got that. So if you can get it this year where you've got Cradle and Zabovic and Gonsalves and Taylor together on the line, and then somebody like either Ryan Baer or Ryan Jacoby or Terrence Moore or Tanner Zenas or Jason Collier or any of those guys were to step up, and I think there's enough versatility in the group that whether you have a guard or a tackle step up, you can figure out how to work them all in. You can get all your 5 best on the field. It looks like the O-line should be a strength, in 2023, maybe even more than it was in 2022. And I think it became pretty good in 22, but I think it can be even better and more of a strength in 23 based on what they're bringing back. So, like I say, 20 that you started with, you've got 12 who have announced what they're doing. 8 of them are leaving. 4 are coming back. The 4 are coming back again. Brandon George, Jake Cradle, Blake Zabovic, and Marquez Williams. That leaves another 8 guys who are TBD or TBA, I guess. They haven't announced yet, at least that I've seen. And I apologize if anybody announces between now, the time I record this, and the time that you watch it. You got the 2 running backs, Vincent Davis and Sebo Flemister. Neither one is announced yet. You've got 3 defensive tackles, Tyler Bentley, Devin Danielson, and David Green. You've got Shane Simon, you've got AJ Woods, and you've got defensive end Chris Maloney. Of that group, Vincent Davis and Chris Maloney both walked on senior day. Now, that's not a guarantee that they're going. Jake Cradle and Blake Zabovic also walked on senior day, and they left. Travassier Dennis and Keaton Slovis did not walk on senior day, and they left. Cradle and Zabovic walked on senior day and came back. Dennis, Slovis, Nick Patty did not walk on senior day, and they're gone. So, you can't entirely bank on that. My guess of the running backs, Vincent Davis and Sebo Flemister, is that Davis comes back and I got that backwards. Davis leaves and Flemister comes back. I think Sebo Flemister would be... I think he showed in his opportunities after he got over some of those early season fumble issues. I think he showed in those, the opportunities that he got, particularly in the Miami game, and he could be a pretty good player. I think he can be, if he's the backup to Rodney Hammond, I think that gives you a pretty dynamite 1-2 punch. And so I think he will come back. This is just my guess. I'm not basing this on inside information, but I would guess that Davis will go and Flemister will come back. I think all 3 of the defensive tackles, none of them walked on senior day, and I think all 3 will come back: Bentley, Danielson, and Green. And I think they'll lean on those guys, but they'll also try and work Elliot Donald and Sean Fitzsimmons and DeAndre Jules into the mix to find those, playmakers. I'm not sure if Danielson, Bentley, or Green, if any of those 3 has really shown himself to be a playmaker to this point in his Pitt career. And so I think they want to find, whether it's Donald or Fitzsimmons or Jules or whoever it is, they want to find that guy who's going to be a playmaker at the defensive tackle spot. But they'll still rely on those 3 to play a lot. Shane Simon, I think he's going to come back and play his 6th year at Pitt. Could be a middle linebacker, could be a money linebacker. Either way, I think he became a pretty nice player as a transfer from Notre Dame. And AJ Woods, like I say, I think he's going to come back is my guess. We'll see. Again, he'll fit into that cornerback rotation with Williams and Devonshire and any of the young players who emerge. And I think there's some good young depth at cornerback on this team. And then Chris Maloney, the defensive end, former walk-on. My guess is he'll be done. He walked on senior day. And again, I know that's not a guarantee of anything, but my guess is he'll probably hang it up and move on. But we'll see what he ultimately ends up deciding to do. But that's the latest update on where the seniors are right now. Who's coming, who's going, or I should say who's staying and who's going, and who we're still waiting to hear from. So we'll keep an eye on those guys who have not announced yet, and we'll see what they have to say when the time comes. But that's the latest right now, and I felt like it was relevant to talk about after Cradle and Zubovic made their announcements yesterday, and Williams made his announcement over the weekend. Jared Wayne wasn't far behind that. I forget exactly what day he went, but these things are sort of trickling out somewhat slowly, but I think we'll have them. All of these guys we're talking about should be announced by the end of the week, I would think. I mean, school's back in, so you're either in school or you're not. So it's I don't know what you're waiting on. I don't know what you're waiting for. You either know or you don't, or no, you know what you're going to do. So we should see those announcements coming. All right. Hope you had a good start to the week yesterday. We appreciate you watching this video today. Of course, make sure you like the video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Like I say, we'll have a live post-game show tomorrow night after the Pitt-Duke game. That should be a lively game. Should be a lot of fun, and we'll have a lot to talk about in the evening, so make sure you tune in for that after the game. If you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, you can get notifications sent to your phone so you always know when we go live so you won't miss it. So make sure you do that. Like and subscribe. We appreciate it. Hope you had a great start to the week. Hope you have a great Tuesday ahead of you. And we'll be back again tomorrow morning to preview Pitt and Duke right here on the Morning Pitt, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.